All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds Pregame Live. Apologies for the technical difficulties. We had to replace the hamster that runs around the wheel. We're good now. Everything's excellent. We were talking about injuries, guys that are out. This will be the final game that Avonte Maddox is out from IR, the fourth of 4 games. It is interesting. Some of it, I guess he's been telling people in the locker room that he's still kind of so we'll have to see. Yeah. He'll probably get activated into the 21-day window, but it doesn't mean he'll be ready to play immediately next week against the Giants. We'll have to see how that goes.
No, they may not even activate him into it.
That's a good point.
If he's not ready to go. Yeah, that's some hamstring strain he's got. They got to get these guys right. We've been saying for a couple weeks now, it's all about getting ready for the playoffs, and getting that. But you want to get that #1 seed.
Yep.
And they don't have such a big lead. We know they have the tiebreaker with Minnesota because they beat them, but. Look, they have a 1-game lead on Minnesota with the tiebreaker a little bit more, but right. They need to close the season well.
All right, Dallas Goedert will miss the 3rd of 4 games today, and then the 4th game will be Giants next week, and then after that, he should be activated into the 21-day window. So the Eagles continue today with Jack Stoll, Tyree Jackson, Grant Calcaterra.
Now, on Goddard, he did tell the media he had the sling removed.
Yep.
He feels good. He feels like he'll be activated actually to play in Week 15.
Yes.
Now, we got to get there first, but...
All right, and the last piece of news, and this should be a help, I would think, to special teams, is that the Eagles elevated practice squad linebacker Christian Ellis for this game against the Titans. First time, I believe, this year they have activated Christian Ellis. And as we know from Christian, the son of Luther Ellis, former defensive tackle for the Lions, is that he can run a little bit, and he's known for being able to run down the field on special teams. So clearly, as you heard Nick Sirianni say this week, that they were going to explore every option they had to improve special teams. This appears to be one of them. All right, we will talk about the Titans. Much more injuries, but they are feeling better about their status today as their Pro Bowl defensive tackle, Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best in the league, will go. He's expected to play, so that is good for them. But they do have 15 guys on injured reserve. Is that not amazing?
And some important guys, too.
Yeah, some really important. I mean, starting early, very early in their offseason when they lost their top pass rusher, Harold Landry, who is one of the best in the league, would you say?
Had a really good year last year, yeah.
That's why he got the big contract.
Yeah, he got a big contract, and then, bam, out for the year. Caleb Farley, cornerback, offensive tackle, Taylor Lewan, and Zach Cunningham are among
the big ones.
They're big guys who are on injured reserve. Of all those 3,
well, Lewan's been gone most of the year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But it impacts the guy that. But the kid that they're playing at left tackle came over from Carolina, and this is where we'll get into the matchups later. This is where the Eagles have to win.
Yeah.
Where you see, because this Titans offensive line, Greg can attest to this. When you talk to people around the league, not great. It's definitely beatable.
We will talk about their O-line.
Yeah. All right, Ryan Tannehill has been dealing with an ankle injury. He missed a couple of games. We also saw Malik Willis go in and play. He's been back, but clearly a little bit. When you watch him, Greg, you can see a little bit of a hobble there, or not as mobile?
I mean, I can't sit here and say that when he's back in the pocket, gee, I'm not going to run because my ankle bothers me, but he's not hobbling around.
No, I didn't mean gimpy. I just mean he doesn't.
I mean, he is a mobile guy.
Yeah.
You'd have to assume each week it gets a little better.
Gotcha.
But he said it's been different because it's believed to be a high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
Right.
He said it's been a little bit of a struggle because he's not had one before.
And I'm sure he came back probably a week earlier than he might have because it was obvious that Malik Willis was not ready to play.
Right. All right, good news for them, though, is that their guard and center, Nate Davis and Ben Jones, should play today.
Davis played last week.
Right. They were
he has
on the injury
report.
This is a
new injury,
right. New injury,
right.
but they expect to play.
And Ben Jones, this is big. He's going to play today. He missed 2 games through a concussion. So they're going to have more or less what they've used for several weeks on the offensive line. Not a great offensive line, very beatable, but they're going to be there.
Now, maybe the biggest losses are the guys who are not on IR, but out, and that would be outside linebacker Denico Autry.
A really good player,
and
by the
slot
way.
corner Elijah Molden.
Right.
Yeah, so those are 2 pretty big losses, you'd say, for what they do?
I would say Autry is a big-time loss. He's a player that I guarantee coaches, when they study the Titans, know all about. And the media may not know about him, but Denico Autry has been a really good player for a number of years. He was a terrific player his last 2 years in Indy before Tennessee signed him, and he's been really, really good. And he's a multiple position player in all their fronts, so he is a big loss.
All right, so a lot for the Titans to overcome, but they've been doing it all year. Let's get into the matchup. You cannot talk Eagles-Titans without talking running games. The Titans bring the king to town today. That's Derrick Henry. one of the best running backs in the league, one of the biggest running backs in the league. And interestingly, the Eagles, the last time they played the Titans, which was 2018 in Nashville, that was sort of right before the Titans changed their offense and made it the focal point being Derrick Henry. The Titans actually won that game, if you guys remember. Mariota throws a 3rd and 15, 19-yard completion to a guy named Tywan Taylor in overtime.
Yep.
And then they win in overtime on a 3rd and 10 touchdown pass from Mariota, Corey Davis, two guys who aren't even on the team anymore.
Cover zero. It's maybe the last time we've seen cover zero from our defense.
Yeah, well, at first it was the picket fence, and then it was the cover zero.
I remember that play.
Matters got beat, because he didn't play inside. Yeah.
All right, so
I also remember a game years ago. Was it when Kenny Britt went off?
Yeah,
Yes.
we talked about that.
I was there when that
Were you there? Were you there?
as
Yeah,
well.
when he looked like Randy Moss that
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
3 touchdowns.
What year? Do we know what year that was?
That was 2010. I believe.
Okay.
It was that long ago?
It was that long ago.
We had
you
a lot
remember
of,
that game,
Yeah,
right?
we had a lot of injuries that game.
Yeah.
too.
In fact, Kevin Cobb had to
Kevin
start
Cobb
that
was starting
game
that game,
for
yeah.
Michael Vick.
But I remember because Kenny Britt had just a huge
Killed
game.
him.
He had a ridiculous.
Kenny Britt was one of those guys, Jay, that he just, big, he could run, talented, and had moments, but never became a great player.
My Michigan coach would call him a head out of the ass guy.
Right, and maybe that's
Maturity issues. He had maturity
right. But you know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
talented,
Yeah,
you
he's
know?
one of those guys
Out of
that
Rutgers, right?
has all the talent in the
Yeah.
world, but can't get his head out of his ass. Excuse me.
Hey, we could say that on Inside the Birds. folks.
That's a great,
Because a couple of years later,
that's a great
It's
expression.
all good.
Al.
It's good.
a couple of years later, they drafted another kid who had a lot of talent and couldn't get his head out of his ass. The kid from Boise State, right? What was his name? Titus.
Titus Young.
Oh,
Yeah,
Titus
yeah,
Young.
exactly.
Totally different kind of
That's
guy.
what-
he's
but
so
it-
different.
it-
Titus
it-
Young
it-
Britt
was
was like
like
5'11", 180, whereas
Yeah.
Britt was like 6'3".
Right, but just the whole maturity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
way worse than that, unfortunately. Yeah,
that's
severe.
true.
But you're right,
There was a lot.
Titus. That's a
true.
good.
He
good
could
call.
run, though. He
Good
could
call,
run.
Jeff. That's
Yeah.
a good call. Good
That's
memory.
just the franchise. It just
Yeah.
stuck me.
You
All
never
right.
know. Sometimes you do remember these things.
I remember
Was Sean
like the most
McDermott the
minute
DC
stuff.
that year? I think Sean was the DC that year.
Titans?
Was he?
Titans?
No, for the Eagles. When
2010?
Kenny Britt had the.
Whatever. No, McDermott wasn't the DC then. He was the DC the Juan year, wasn't he? Didn't he? Wasn't he in the interim?
Juan was coming out of the lockout in 2011.
Yeah,
We know that.
2011. But Juan got benched or fired, and then Sean took over.
So who was the DC?
No.
No,
Todd
Todd
Bowles.
Bowles. Todd Bowles.
Who was the DC in 2010 when Britt?
Great question.
Put the.
I'm gonna have to look
At
this
the
up.
big game.
It was Jim.
Was it Jim?
No, it was Sean. I'm sorry.
It was
McDermott.
Sean. That's what I thought.
It was Sean.
Yeah, it was
McDermott,
Sean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's go back to Derrick Henry.
kid.
Everybody knows how good he is. We're not going to sit here and talk about Derrick Henry being a good running back. But Greg, when you watch him, give me a little bit about what makes him, besides being big,
Well,
what makes him unique in his running
let's
style?
tie Henry's traits with their run game.
Yes.
Henry, and this is one of the reasons why he did not come in the league and people thought, wow, this guy's going to be a great back right away. Because Henry is long, with long legs, okay? He's not laterally quick, okay? So a lot of people thought, because he's an upright runner with long legs, that he couldn't necessarily be a feature back, that he didn't have the traits that would allow him to be a volume runner, particularly between the tackles. So Henry is a back that needs initial space, okay, because he needs to generate speed and velocity. So they're a high percentage zone running team, okay, predominantly what some would call mid to outside zone. Different coaches have different names. You can talk to O-line coaches, and every O-line coach has a different name for all these
Wide
runs.
zone, mid
Right,
zone.
right,
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
that. But he's essentially a mid to outside stretch zone runner.
Toss right, toss left.
Yeah, they'll occasionally do pin pull, which gets them on the outside as well, where they pull the tackle,
Yep.
okay, and they seal with, either
my
tight
favorite run
ends
play.
or wide receivers. But the whole point of Henry is you need to allow him to generate space and velocity and momentum.
Right.
Because if he can do that, 3-yard runs become 9-yard runs. And that's what Henry and of course, he's always a guy that has been able to take it to the house. He's done that less this year, and I get asked all the time, has he lost speed? That's a tough question. I don't know how Jay feels about that. That's a tough question for me to answer. I don't know if he's truly lost speed. He just hasn't had as many long runs, whereas he always seemed to have those in years past. But he needs space, and their run game is built to give him space, so his first 2, 3, 4 steps allow him to generate stride length. Stride length is kind of his deal.
Right.
Not having A.J. Brown hurts this team tremendously. Because every snap, first down, pretty much the last 3 or 4 games, people are in eight people in the box.
Yeah.
You know, it's just very, very hard to generate the type of production that you want if you don't respect the guys that are outside. Robert Woods is a really good pro, solid number 2, number 3 guy. But Treylon Burks isn't there yet. No, he's not there yet. So they don't have that guy that can make the box even so he can get out in space and run in open lanes and be able to take one to the house. So that's just them missing A.J. Brown and not having a guy that they respect on the outside defensively.
And they're different than a lot of teams because Henry is an I back. He's not a shotgun back.
Right.
You know, most teams are in the shotgun these days, it seems.
Yeah.
You know, it seems the aberration is the quarterback under center.
Yeah.
He's an I back.
And he's 8 yards deep.
Yes. Because
That goes to the whole getting downhill.
getting downhill with space. So
Sure.
he's an I back.
Right. All right. Interestingly, Derrick Henry has not had some royal numbers lately. His last 3 weeks, he has not topped 87 yards in a game.
And yards per rush has not been very good.
Last 3 weeks, he's averaging 2.78 yards per carry. He's rushed the ball 64 times for 178 yards, including just 17 for 38 last week against the Bengals.
He has the most first down rushes of any back in the league.
Yeah.
And as I said, he has the most runs far and away out of multiple tight end sets. That's who they are.
Right.
And when they come off losses, as we said, they don't look to do gimmick and I mean, when I say gimmick, you know, could they have a flea flicker? Of course. But they're not going to change their whole methodology and their whole philosophical approach.
Right.
They're going to try to come out and be physical and run Derrick Henry.
That's what they want to do.
Right.
Is teams are going 5 down linemen and they're bringing up and their mind. And this is what the Eagles have to do today. The teams that have stopped Derrick Henry, their mind is made up that we're going to sacrifice our body to put it in there. We're going to throw it in there. Von Bell did a great job last week. All the secondary defenders for the Bengals did. They were downhill in a hurry in order to stop his momentum. Because the last thing you want is that big old dude with 4 or 5 yards of steam on the other sideline of scrimmage at you. So everyone is trying to attack him before he can get that momentum up, and you have to make your mind up for that. Our guys have been business-oriented lately, so we have to be able to make our mind up.
I mean, you're going to see a lot of 5-2 fronts today by the Eagles.
Yeah.
You know, where you're going to see the 5-man base front, and you're going to see Edwards and White at linebacker, and they don't often, I don't want to say they never do it, they don't often play a true 8-man, but they have the safeties close.
Right.
So the safeties have primary run support responsibilities, even though it's not like your typical 8-man with a single post safety.
No, it's not a single post, but they're in cover 4 and they're low.
They're
and most teams do the cover 4 now, and then they can get out of it to everything else. Because that's the easiest thing to transform into.
You can transform into anything
from there. Yeah.
Right. So we'll get into a little bit what the Eagles can do today. But Adam, one of the interesting things about Derrick Henry is even though his rushing numbers are down the last 3 weeks, for the year, his receiving numbers, and it's not like he's known as some kind of great receiving back, but his receiving numbers are already far and away a career high. You mentioned that they throw some screens.
Yeah, in fact, they were doing that in training camp. They were just working on some different things to try to get him out in space. Because Greg's right. If you get him turned, he's in trouble. But if you get him out in space and he's able to turn his body straight. And last week, that screen where he obviously fumbled it, but he ran down the field.
69 yards.
Yeah. He wants. If you notice, the blocking was out there. He could just run anywhere he wanted.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out different ways to get him the football because those of us who watch them week to week, they have trouble scoring.
Right.
This is a team that really struggles scoring, but getting him in space, that's what we'll look to do. And also watch Dontrell Hilliard.
I was just going to mention him.
He's another guy to watch.
He is really their pass receiving back, and he has speed, and they can line him up not only offset in the backfield on passing situation downs, but he can detach from the formation.
Right.
He's really the pass receiver. Henry does not have good hands. Really, all he can do is throw him screens.
Sure.
I've also seen balls thrown to him where he's had to try to use his hands, and the old expression, he has hands like feet. He does not have great hands at all. He can't really catch the ball with his hands.
Right.
Dontrell Hilliard has four receiving touchdowns for a running back. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Certainly something.
And he can run.
Yeah. Right. Adam mentioned that the Titans have tried to use different ways to get Derrick Henry involved in the offense, especially if the rushing is not there. Conversely, it seems like the Packers were looking for a little bit of a different way to run the ball against the Eagles than maybe the last few teams had done. I think fans felt like it was a step back, the way the Green Bay Packers were able to run the ball compared to how the defense played against the Indianapolis Colts. What did you guys see on why the Eagles all went back to kind of where they were in run defense last week?
I thought they attacked our edges away from those big guys a little bit better than most teams.
Different, right?
Which was a little bit different. But yeah, they ran it on the edges a bunch. And like I said, if our team isn't downhill with our secondary in those situations, because when you run it outside and you're running it off the tight end and you're basically forcing the corners to trigger, you're forcing the safeties to get down faster, and if those guys are not aggressive toward the line of scrimmage, you're going to make some yards.
Right.
And the other thing I'll say is this. I talked about this on the Q&A show, is that there's only so many times as a defensive tackle that a team, I think our guys are not as alert as they should be in situations. You know,
like communicative?
No,
or
just understanding.
Okay.
Like for an example, as a receiver, if I know the chances of this play being covered 2, I'm not going to fire out in my stance because I have to avoid the guy because he isn't going anywhere.
Right.
And the same way on the defensive line, if I know that they're in a run look or run formation, I can't go off stride length. I have to be able to two-gap and control my feet rather than just fire off the ball. So guys are getting turned when I think that they should be two-gapping, but that's just my opinion.
Right. Do you think the Packers intentionally caught the Eagles in 4 down for like nickel formations with 11 personnel and then tried to spring the run on them?
Well, I think that's what teams do. I mean, there are offensive coaches in this league too.
They get paid?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it might be different today. We'll see. Look, the Titans are going to run the ball, but maybe they'll choose to run it differently based on studying the Eagles' defense.
Right.
But we know that the Eagles, when they face base personnel, 2 or 3 tight ends, will line up with a 5 down front. If you line up in 11 personnel as an offense with 3 wide, maybe you get the Eagles in a 4-man front and you feel more comfortable.
Right.
But I believe the touchdown by Dillon, the 20-yarder last week, did come against a 5-man front. And
it did.
And I forget the defensive, was it Joe? Someone just got moved by a double team, which happens,
Was it Williams? I thought
it was
Milton.
No,
Williams
it was
and
Milton.
Sue.
It was Milton Williams. I believe it was Milton.
But the point is that, I see that every single week in the league. So let's make this clear. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. I mean, that's not the way it's coached. You don't want a guy to get moved 4 yards off the ball by a double team. But, that happens every week in the league. Double team, when it's 700 pounds or 650 pounds of offensive linemen, against one guy, sometimes guys get moved.
Right.
Now, then it's incumbent upon other guys to do their job as well.
Right.
But that's going to happen at times.
Sure.
Yeah. They had Kazir White and I think Milton Williams in the same gap.
Yeah.
So there was no stack and both of them got washed out and there was a seam up there. Yeah.
They're not, Kazir White not kept clean. He's small.
Yeah.
So
Look, the week before we talked about how Joseph and Sue were just eating up those blocks.
Right.
So, it's funny. Adam made this point earlier, and amazingly enough, I agree with Adam.
Breaking news.
Right. Make a note of that.
Agreed. Okay.
I'm not saying you don't want to stop the run, but I don't feel, and Jay could totally disagree with me, and if you do, jump in. I don't think the Eagles have been as bad against the run as it's made out to be. In other words, I don't think this is going to be the downfall of their team.
Fair.
Do they want to be better?
Right.
Sure. I mean, you can always say that about anything, really, throughout a course of a season. Do you want to be better? Are there times they're not what they want to be? But I don't think this is a glaring weakness that is going to pull the entire team down.
No, I would agree with you.
You might disagree.
I think that based on who they have to play in the division.
Yes, I was going to say certain matchups, though, I would be worried about.
Yeah, so like the 49ers, this will bite your head off. But yes, overall, the structure of the Eagles' defense is not to give up touchdowns. And Jonathan Gannon is saying, I don't believe a team is going to be patient enough, and they're not going to get in the end zone running the football.
Right, and
just like that, just like long passes.
So, like I said, that doesn't mean you want to give up big yards, but I think built into the philosophy is the idea that they're a total team, the Eagles, okay? If you can take 12, 13 plays to score on us without making a mistake, more power to you.
Yep.
Number two, we have a good offense. We're going to score. Right. So at some point, you can't stay patient running the ball. You're going to have to throw the ball because we're going to score 28, 30 points. So I don't think, like I said, do you want to be better? Of course. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they view this as a philosophical issue.
Right. Okay.
Well, but why would, if they don't view it as that, why would they go get Linval, Joseph, and Sue?
And that's a great point.
They knew the dam broke, though. They knew it was bad.
Right.
They knew it was
because
bad.
They needed to be better.
They needed more bodies.
And they needed bodies.
Yeah.
They needed bodies.
With Jordan Davis' injury.
No, so and you're right. Look, I'm not saying that what I just said is gospel, but I'm saying
I know I get you. I get it.
Yeah, but I don't think they view this as this is a total flaw in our team that it's going to prevent us from getting where we want to go.
I think the bigger concern, as Jason brings up, is the idea of a team. It's not even prolifically running against you because Washington did not run the ball prolifically.
No.
They never had. It's the idea that.
And by the way, Green Bay didn't put up huge rushing
you.
numbers either. I mean, they were okay. They had some runs.
They had
over 100, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't like they just ran through them all game.
No, it was like 101
They also had a
yards.
touchdown.
Right.
Yeah. But the idea of being ball controlled, which is sort of turning the tables on what the Eagles do to other teams. And a team like the 49ers or the Cowboys with Dak.
But you know, it's funny. I've had conversations with O-line coaches in the league that I know well. One with a team that likes to run the ball, and he said to me exactly what teams that run the ball, what they struggle with philosophically. They say, hey, we can run the ball really well. The big issue is can we score enough points? So, defensively, teams look at it the same way.
Right.
You can run the ball, but can you score enough points?
And I think like a team like the Niners in the playoffs, and maybe the Cowboys, probably can do it better than others.
But what backs your point up is that the only time that this is a big glaring issue is when the Eagles turn the ball over and we're not scoring the numbers that we have.
Right.
It wasn't an issue earlier in the season because the Eagles were scoring 28 points.
And the Eagles were getting ahead.
And but they're scoring 28 points a game now in their head. So it's like, it's a non-starter. Then Washington happens where we're turning the ball over, not scoring the points that we did.
I would also add this.
Now it's a big problem.
Right.
If you talk to 32 defensive coordinators, they would tell you we would invite you to run. We want you to run.
Correct.
Because they don't think you can go down the field.
Right. Take 10 plays, but you're not scoring on them.
So it's a philosophical issue, and it's not a mathematical equation of 2 and 2 equals 4.
Right.
There's not a right and a wrong. It's a philosophical issue. And sometimes, as can happen in games, as Jay pointed out, the Eagles cross over to the side where you say, hey, they need to stop the run better.
Right.
But I doubt they look at it as a total philosophical problem.
Sure. And I would also bet the Eagles knew going into the year this was probably not going to be their strongest point. They're small at linebacker.
But Jay made a great point that this is the way Gannon ultimately, that's his philosophy, okay? That's the approach.
Sure.
We're not going to give up big plays, which they haven't really for 2 years.
Right.
We're not going to give up big plays.
Sure.
And if you want to run the ball and you think you can take 12, 13, 14 plays, more power to you.
And then we'll see if you can score in the red zone.
Right.
Score in the red zone, exactly. First game of their careers, this coaching staff, was the Atlanta game. They got ran all over in the first half by Patterson and Mike Davis. But as soon as Atlanta got into the inside the red zone, they couldn't do anything but kick field goals. There's definitely a truth.
So it's a great conversation without a real answer.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So wait, let's talk about from a personnel standpoint, because without C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the Eagles are without one of those guys who during those first 8 weeks of the season helped turn the table. All those interceptions that he had, that was a big part of it. However, what I think is fascinating about this matchup is his replacement, Reed Blankenship, is an actual safety who has played safety his whole career.
He was a 5-year starter in college.
5 years of playing safety. And Jason, you brought up that when you watched the tape last week, you felt like, even though he's a rookie and made some mistakes, he was willing to stick his nose in there.
Well, he wants to tackle.
Which you could argue is
and
more necessary today.
Me, I love that.
Yeah.
Me too. I love that. I like guys that are about their business and want to be downhill and want to make a play, want to stick their nose in it. That's the way the game is supposed to be played.
Right.
There's a right way to play the game, and there's a wrong way to play the game. Coming downhill from a safety position, a safety should be feared by the other team. And I like the way his mentality coming down toward the line of scrimmage. Now, A lot of errors in the passing game.
Right.
You can argue that both of those touchdowns were given up. The passing touchdowns were his responsibility. But you're going to get better at that, and he's going to get a little bit more patient. But yeah, I liked his mentality coming toward the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and for today's game against the Titans, who have far more of a prolific rushing attack than a passing attack, you could sort of make the argument that it's beneficial for them to have a tackling safety in there.
Yeah, no,
I say that, now watch Treylon Burks go into the slot and burn him for 3 touchdowns, right?
Hey, listen, if it happens, that's the way you want to lose. And just to be honest, you want Tannehill and Treylon Burks to go out and have the best game of their life.
Right, you'll dare them to try to beat you that way.
Yeah,
right.
it'll happen, 3 games out of the year. Just hope it's not this game.
Look, maybe the Titans decide to come out in 11 personnel and put Josiah Scott in the slot and focus their run game out of 11 personnel.
Right.
They're not going to stop running, but maybe they change the tactical way in which they run.
Right.
Teams make those kinds of adjustments.
You think about the rise here of Blankenship and how sort of unlikely it is, Adam, because this was a deficiency they thought going back to July that they needed a depth at safety. They went and signed Jaquaski Tart, and a lot of people thought it'll be week 4. When Jaquaski Tart is in the starting lineup next to Marcus Epps.
And he was a good player in San Francisco.
Right.
So it's not as if they brought in a guy that couldn't play.
By the way, he started in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he started in the Super Bowl.
He had a bad interception drop
play.
Yeah.
But we started to notice.
It would have been in another Super Bowl, that's right.
We noticed early in camp that Tart was starting off on the third team. Something wasn't right. And then Reed Blankenship was even getting reps over him and Kevon Wallace. So we were starting to see that ascent pretty early.
The Blankenship one was shocking. We didn't know much about it. Middle Tennessee State.
I was doing that whole who's number 40?
Right, exactly.
I didn't watch his tape either, so I didn't know anything about him.
So we had asked, for a scouting report, always in the right place. Smart, tough, coachable, physical. But the warts will show up. He's not very athletic.
Correct.
His athletic numbers were not good despite starting for 5 years. But he's a kind of guy, he knows where to go. He just can't always get there.
And by the way, there's 100 safeties like that in college football who are really, really good players, everything you just said, and just not athletically gifted enough to be full-time NFL starters.
Sure.
And those guys end up, if they stay in the league, they play special teams, they're spot guys, but now he's got to play and start.
Right.
So there's the same with backup players at any position. 1, 2, 3 games get us out of a tough spot. 4, 5, 6 games, the warts show up.
Right.
And this becomes a problem the longer he plays. Now, with Gardner Johnson, you hope that he's ready for Week 17.
There you go. Give me 30 seconds on what Kevon Wallace has not done well throughout his Eagles career, if you can do it.
30 seconds of
what
he
played.
Because you shouldn't, if you're Kevon Wallace, you shouldn't be losing snaps to an undrafted rookie safety.
I've had that conversation with Kevon Wallace about his mentality toward the line of scrimmage and being like this is what you don't want to see. And this is any defensive player, especially when it comes to safeties and linebackers, this applies. You don't want to see an opportunity where a guy can shoot and they're patting their feet. You got to be the lion that's going to attack. And I think that sometimes he's not as aggressive toward the line of scrimmage, and coaches hate that. From the linebackers and safety position, when you see color, you go and attack the color. And if you go and be forceful to the line of scrimmage, you're going to spill the play in any direction, so you can't be wrong. So you go out there and shoot. Yeah.
There you go. All right. That right there is why you got to stick with us, even through the technical difficulties. You don't get that on any other pregame show other than Inside the Birds Pregame Live. But we will take a quick break here to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, big thanks to our friends at Sky Motor Cars. You can hop out there to Westchester, PA and visit them. You'll tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. They'll give you a great deal. If not, just visit them at SkyMotorCars.com. All right, real quickly, we were talking about Ryan Tannehill before, working through the ankle. I find this fascinating. His he is averaging the exact same number of passing yards this year that he did last year, to the decimal
per
point.
game?
219.6 yards per
Really?
game
Oh,
last year.
chances of that?
And
Not
this
a
year.
high number in today's
It's
NFL.
not a high number, but considering that he lost A.J. Brown and that he's had the offensive difficulty, but his passer rating
They were hurt
and
all last
QBR
year.
are also higher than they were last year. So something's going on there with Ryan Tannehill. That
Well, he's a
veteran quarterback.
He's a professional
He's
veteran.
a solid.
quarterback.
He's a solid player. He's made a Pro Bowl. You know, he's a solid
You're
player.
not dealing with a bad quarterback. He can make throws.
The big concern with him is if they get down, as you saw in the playoff game and other games, so the game against Cincinnati, he sort of freezes. He's just not real comfortable, and this happened to him in Miami. It's one of the reasons why they got rid of him. But yeah, he's a guy that will make plays. I'm interested to see what happens here if they get behind.
Right.
Because we just talked about earlier in the show when they were down 24-9 at halftime and still ran the ball against Seattle and won it in overtime. They don't have A.J. Brown anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle for them every week to generate plays on offense, so it's not going to be easy. And by the way, the weather's clear today, not very much wind. It's passing weather, not that they're going to throw the ball a lot, Tennessee. So we'll see if they can get explosive plays going.
Meteorologist Adam Kaplan.
You know me,
Tropical
man, with
storm
weather.
Caplan,
Yeah,
that's what we call him.
Like sometimes I always wonder with teams like this because they're so philosophical in what they want to do. They want to run the ball. It's the Vrabel mentality, a defensive coach's dream. We're going to Derrick Henry. You have Hooper there. You have Robert Woods there. You have Westbrook. Was it Keeney? How do you say his name? Keeney's name, and you have Treylon Burks. So you have guys that have been drafted or brought to your program to make plays. Just that those guys don't get an opportunity, and the Eagles could force that. And there's been games this year where those guys stepped up and made plays when they had the opportunity. So you can't, say that they can. It's just a philosophy thing that doesn't aid them or help them to be playmakers.
Right. So I think if you look at the last 3 weeks for the Eagles, if you were to look at the big plays they have given up in the passing game, most of them have come from receivers in the slot. I think Christian Watson got him a few times in the slot. McLaurin got C.J. Gardner-Johnson a couple of times in that loss in the slot, and then Pittman and Paris Campbell from the slot also.
Just before we move on.
Randall Cobb got him in the slot.
I want to ask you a question. Yeah. The Watson touchdown this past week, the one in the third or fourth quarter.
Yes.
Where they motioned, and he ended up being the slot receiver.
Yes.
And Epps ended up playing over him.
Terrible decision.
Did you think that was a mistake by the defense that somebody should have adjusted, or did they just decide, to play it that way?
They decided to play the way. It wasn't a mistake. Now, this is what I'll say about that. There is only one way to play that 2 over when you get caught in man coverage, and the safety have to be a veteran safety that knows football.
Right.
It was Reed Blankenship in that situation. Epps' outside leverage against Christian Watson, KYP, knowing the personnel of your team and knowing the personnel of the other team. You make a radar call and you take that guy over and you send Epps to the post. That's the way you play that's how you play.
They should have done that.
They should have done that.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. And now you have Epps trying to
run with Watson. Right.
And he has better leverage.
Right. No, because Epps was playing him from the outside in, and Watson's going to run away from him.
And you'll know when I'm talking about radar because I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
Ed Reed, classic.
Right.
Ed Reed would jump the deep cross like that every time, and they would put Webb on the post or whoever the backside corner was.
Right.
That's the same. That's the exact. That's what should have happened.
Okay.
By the way, Greg, I would encourage you, like all of our viewers, to watch the Q&A show every Tuesday because they did a fantastic all-22 breakdown of that play and the radar coverage. So Q&A show
well, I know exactly
every
what
Tuesday at 6 a.m.
I know you did.
Backside corner overlaps.
Yeah, just overlap.
Overlaps, yeah. You see that all the time. Yeah. Backside corner
given
overlap.
what you guys
I know
discussed,
exactly what he's talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
Given what you guys just discussed, though, if you're John Gannon today, if you're Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing, are you looking at the slot here for Treylon Burks or a Westbrook Akini as sort of a favorable matchup for the Titans? Or one they want to try to exploit?
100%.
Yeah.
The last 3 games, everyone has. Was it 3 games now? Was it 2 games?
No,
three
it's
games.
3.
It's 3 games. The last 3 games, people have game planned a way to get Josiah Scott in a one-on-one situation.
Right.
And so they know that they can make yards there, whether it's third down conversions and or touchdowns.
Right.
The Randall Cobb play where they stacked him and then gave him a departure release outside to put him outside, knowing he had man coverage. That was a design. It was a great design. And and you saw the same thing on the corner route and the over route when it came to Philip Dorsett.
Yeah.
Right. So those are ways that offensive coordinators are starting to realize that it's a weakness. And Josiah Scott is a good player, but he's not Avonte Maddox, and he can't hang with the type of talent.
And now you have both Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott in the secondary.
And Westbrook Ahini is, they're not a big passing team, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you Westbrook Ahini is a superstar, but he's not a bad player.
Right.
And he makes tough catches for them.
He's a tall guy, doesn't run real fast, but very reliable, very coachable. Yep.
And he's had big games for them.
He gets open. He's look.
And he works the middle of the field well.
They actually have taller receivers, so this will be interesting to see what the approach is with this team. But again, we know it's their run-first mentality. When they throw it, also, by the way, they're a really good red zone team. Another stat.
They are, yeah.
Go ahead.
They had I don't know why their game plan was a little bit more aggressive versus the Packers than most teams that they played. Did you notice that? Like when it comes to passing against the Packers, to me, I felt like that they didn't continue to just hit their head against the wall, and they started to let Tannehill pass it.
Greg, was that the game
more.
when they made the switch and Rudy Ford in and moved Rasul Douglas out of the slot to the outside?
Well, Rasul Douglas was definitely on the outside.
Yes, then it might have been that game.
He ended up with a pick.
I'll tell you what, though, they have some great red zone concepts. Okay. They threw a touchdown pass, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm waiting to do it in the matchup show for the right week, to Hilliard.
The corner route from the backfield.
Which, it was against cover 3, it cannot be covered. I'm telling you right now, that route cannot, it cannot be covered if you're playing base cover 3.
Yeah.
You know the play.
I know exactly. Yeah, on the left side.
Because it ends up being what we call 4 strong, where 4 come to one side, and it can't be covered. The design. As soon as I saw it, I said, "Oh, I've seen this play over the years," because I have. Somebody ran it against Seattle. Atlanta ran it against Seattle for a touchdown years ago when Seattle was in the cover 3 mode with Legion of Boom. You can't cover that receiver in your basic cover 3 concept.
Too few players
versus
too many
defenders.
Right.
So they have some really good red zone concepts.
Okay. All right, we'll look for that. Treylon Burks, what do you remember about him coming out of college?
Oh, I really like Treylon Burks.
You did?
Well, he's big. He's got really big hands. He caught everything. He showed speed in the SEC. He ran by corners in the SEC. He was used in multiple ways at Arkansas, which led people to think of him as a little bit as a gimmick player.
Right.
I saw people make the comparison a lot to Laviska Shenault, the idea that he was a little bit of a gimmick player. But I thought he could be a quality wideout. I thought he needed work. I thought that he didn't have a refined feel for route running and understanding how to do that at the level needed to do that. But I think you can be taught that.
Yeah. When I look at him on tape now, there is no receiver technique portion that you like. Yeah. But athletically, and you let him run those types of things, it jumps off because he still runs by guys. But when it just comes to just technical, there's like nothing. Like there's times where he can give a guy a stick and stop his feet. It's nothing. It's like he's running to get open. You can get open like that.
Right.
If you're in zone, you got the right timing, you can get open that way. Yeah. Right. It's just that it's not consistent in order to be good enough.
They see him as their shot play guy. In fact, the Green Bay game was the craziest thing that I've seen in years. They have the ball. They're up by 10. They're up by 10 with 2 minutes left, and the Packers have no timeouts left. They still threw the ball, and I think that was a shot at Matt LaFleur because there's no reason you would throw the ball when your opponent doesn't have the football. You have it. Let's just throw the football with 2 minutes left. I just have this feeling.
But they're trying to work him in now earlier in games. It was in the Green Bay game where they hit him, I think, for 40 yards on the first possession on a really nice 3-man route concept, nice design.
The cover 4 where the guy came down. Yeah. I don't know what he was looking at.
But, they're trying to get him involved earlier now.
Sure.
And he's very good run after catch. He is a big body now.
Yeah.
He is a big man.
Yeah, he has a 51-yard catch in each of his last 2 games.
Right.
No touchdowns yet, except for the one that no receiving touchdowns yet, but he did recover a fumble in the end zone for his first.
But no, they're trying to get him more involved.
Well, why the slow start?
So he showed up after the draft, not in great physical shape. He had an asthma problem. He also had a hamstring issue. Very slow start to the season. not a great training camp, had to get in better physical shape. He's in shape now.
Right.
You're trying to make up for lost time here. And by the way, coaches are Rob Moore, the former NFL receiver.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Does a good job with them.
Yeah.
It's one of the best receiver coaches in the league.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, Rob Moore is a great. I had him coming out of at Athletes Performance in Arizona, coming out of college.
Oh, did you?
And I love Rob Moore as a receiver coach.
Oh,
love
nice.
him.
Wow.
Showed
Now,
me a bunch of stuff.
let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
You may.
No.
In your mind, and you were a technician, what makes a guy a good receiver? When you say a guy's a good receivers coach, what is he doing to help make receivers
Great
better?
question.
Because you hear that a lot.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
guy's
What
a good
makes him so
coach.
good, right?
Like, what makes
Sure.
a guy a good receivers coach?
Like making it simple. Like I've been fortunate enough. I had Ricky Prohl in Carolina. I thought he
I
was
love
an
Ricky.
excellent coach.
Ricky's, yeah.
And the thing is, they break things down to the point where you can understand it. Like, for an example, they'll say, hey, listen, this route is in between this yard range. If you put this foot up, you can get out of it in three steps. If you put this foot up, it's going to take you 4 steps. And you do it, and you're like, oh, this works. Or you understand that guy's like, hey, if you have leverage, you want to do something to keep it. If you don't have, you got to do something to gain it. And he'll show you examples of how it's done, sticking routes, and when you use these moves. Like, Ricky is a big fan of this rocker step. He loves the rocker step, and he shows you when and where it can be used, rather than just throwing stuff at the board and you don't understand where to implement this stuff, right? So Rob Moore was one of those guys that understood leverage and how to keep leverage. And he's like, hey, if you get here on the slant and open up here 45, and it worked every time. And that's what you want from a receiver coach. When he's explaining things to you, does it make sense to you? And also, can he teach you how to do it rather than just saying it?
Just say it.
Yeah.
I've heard you say the phrase a lot over these last couple of years, get a guy off a spot.
Yeah.
So, like, what does that mean when you say that?
Yeah, so for an example, if there's a guy right in front of you and you're thinking 45, if you go at a 45-degree angle on his outside shoulder, that guy has to turn. And if you can understand when a guy is going to turn to move or take a step, I'm doing whatever I can to make that guy take that 45 step out of his spot so I can redirect and go in a different direction.
So you're waiting for him to turn, and then you can work off that.
And I can work off of that. Or if he stays put, now I still have that angle.
Right.
Right? So and when I say move out of his spot, you see what's the head coach of the Dolphins?
Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. When he was a receiver coach for the Bengals, he would teach his receivers how to do releases based on Allen Iverson's crossover.
Right.
Wow.
He didn't even show them Jerry Rice or anybody. He showed them a basketball player, because in basketball, you take the ball through your legs, you show your whole body going in one direction, and you're trying to get that guy to move so you can go straight.
Right.
That's the whole premise of playing receiver. Get the guy to move, shift to one shot so you can go straight. You can't just run straight because he's going to push you over left or right. You want to keep your line.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great stuff. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
That's
there.
a piece.
I love
No,
that
just
right
because,
there.
you
That's
hear
good.
that kind of
No,
stuff
it's
all the
great stuff.
time.
Yeah.
People say, well, he's a great route runner.
Sure.
And I always say to someone, well, what does that mean?
How do you set him
Sure.
up?
You know, for the average fan saying he's a great route runner, that doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Good explanation.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Excellent stuff. All right. With that, we're going to take a break real quick to hear from our friends at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook.
Game night for me is every night. At the place where I meet up with the guys, grab a cold one, and watch the big game on the big screen. So whether it's the money line, the pass line, or a parlay, I'm in it to win. This is my city, and this is my place.
All right, big thanks to our friends here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, host of Inside the Birds Pregame Live. And of course, if you want to make your bets, you come down here, do it in the Sportsbook or on the Bet Rivers app. Eagles once again favorites in this game, not as heavy as it's been the last few weeks. They are 4.5-point favorites with an over-under at 44.5. And I know in a second or two, we'll be getting a special delivery here from Jack's Bar and Grill, which, by the way, it's available at every weekend, every Eagles home game. They've got specials here that include $2 Miller Lights, $15 bottomless chips and salsa, $12 pretzel bites, and $16 easy peel shrimp. They've got the home field advantage spin to win contest. Bettors who place qualifying game day bets in the Bet Rivers Sportsbook can enter the Spin to Win contest that's held every home game by placing at least a $50 bet on pro football. 8 winners are pulled via random drawing to spin the wheel. Prizes include free play, cash, and 2 tickets to an Eagles home game. And of course, if the Eagles win, 2 more winners are selected. And that's 10 wins so far for the Eagles. So quick math tells me 20 extra winners in the Spin to Win contest. All that in here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook, where Philly loves a winner.
Can I make one quick point? We were talking a lot about the pass game, you know, but I think at its core, what the Titans want every game to be is a heavyweight fight. I think that's the way they want to play. Now, again, does every game turn out that way? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that's their comfort zone.
Sure.
They want it to be a heavyweight fight. Wouldn't you agree, Jay?
I would say that 100%. They're built like that.
Yeah.
They want the body blows. They want all of that. So
it's hard to survive a 17-game season doing that, but they seem to excel
that's
their style.
That's
but I would say this: they're not built to come from behind. They're just not.
No,
it's not their deal.
They're not.
But but they will stay with a run. If they get down 10 or 14 points, they'll actually stay with the run, which is crazy in today's NFL.
I'd love to see that stuff. If I had a preference of playing football, it'd be that way.
Yeah,
playing just like smash mouth.
That's the type of football that I remember. That's the type of football that.
But as a receiver, though. Yeah, Jason was a tough guy. I know you block.
I didn't like the rule of the guy. 5 yards you can't touch him. I hated that damn bro. Because now you got guys that can't play receiver playing.
Yeah.
I've asked this before. It's been a while. You prefer man coverage over zone?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Because now it's your talent.
All right, here we go.
Our special delivery from Jack's Bar and Grill. We have Christina here.
Hey, Christina.
Thank you so much.
She's not just dropping off our drinks. She's going to tell us who's going to win today.
Ginger ale? I get that.
Ginger ale.
Is there a ginger ale there?
Says,
that's for me.
Oh yeah.
You get your whiskey sour today, huh?
I got some. I got a shot. My Mexican sauce.
Nice.
That's going to Jeff.
All right.
You guys are working. Be responsible.
I guess that's not for me. Okay.
What did you first that we drank on the air? Anyway.
I mentioned special teams. I wanted to get into it a little bit more, and I had talked about the Packers, who they just played as being a team that is infamous for losing games in the playoffs because of special teams. Meanwhile, today's opponent, the Titans, very good special teams all around, and of course we think of the Music City Miracle when we think of good special teams for the Titans. Jay, I want to ask you this, because Greg was asking you earlier, Adam, about how hard it is to fix these kind of issues in the middle of the year. Yeah. But now also when you have Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott as starters on defense, they call up one guy, they call up Christian Ellis, who's never played in an NFL game to my knowledge. So how difficult can this fix be when you already have guys you need on special teams playing starters?
It's an attitude change, and for everyone that's looking at the table and what's going on special teams, I'll give you guys an example of what's going on. When you're on kickoff coverage, you can't have guys in one lane. And there's a bunch of guys not understanding where the ball is, and they're going around blocks. There's a time to go around blocks, but it has to be in a void area that's about 30 yards away from the football. Once you get 15 yards inside, 15 yards within the football, you have to two-gap and beat guys over the top, and we're running around. So we need tougher-minded players. And do I think that can change? I think that's a chewing out by the coach, because you have NFL players. They should be able to do it. And another thing that kind of helps this situation is a returner. I know that doesn't apply, but a returner gives guys hope and motivation. Because even if they're not playing their best, a returner can pop one, and it changes the outlook of the special teams.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it all year that we need someone to return, because that changes everything for special teams.
Well,
I know we're talking about kick coverage, but those same guys are on kickoff return. And if they believe that a guy can take it to the house, they're going to block better.
That might be the hardest thing for them to fix midseason, because even if they took Britton Covey out of that punt return role, who are you putting in? Or even the kick return role, who are you putting in?
I think it's a role because of the time and because of the kickoffs, being phased out of the game. People are not putting much interest anymore in returners. And I think that you're going to need them later in the season.
We will see. By the way, the Eagles have a couple of players who will be coming back. Avonte Maddox potentially next week. Dallas Goedert. Someone's going to have to get off the 53-man roster, and you look, and there are not a lot of obvious candidates other than a guy like Tyree Jackson, a fourth tight end, or Britton Covey, who only does one thing and doesn't do it particularly well.
He's played since about 2 months. Actually,
That's
did he
another
play
one.
that Jacksonville game?
He played in one game. Yeah, I think it was Jacksonville.
Two nice runs, and that was it. Yeah.
N'Kobe Dean his name should be called a bunch. If N'Kobe Dean is the guy that's drafted in the 3rd round, and he's a person that we view as a starter, he should dominate special teams.
Why is he not? Is he one of the persons you're saying is not
What I'm saying is that he has to step his game up.
Okay.
This is one of those areas when you're a guy that could be slotted as a starter, a potential starter, you have to be able to dominate special teams. If you can't dominate special teams as a starter, you can't start.
Right. That's a great
point
there.
about
That's what they
N'Kobe
tell
Dean.
you. That coaches will tell players that you got to start here first. If you want to get on the field, you got to start here.
Because they drafted N'Kobe Dean to end up being a starting linebacker. Sure. Maybe not as a rookie. Nothing's wrong there. But Jay's right about the special teams. He would have to be a dominant special teams player.
That's how it is. That's how it always is.
Are you surprised that Christian Ellis got the call up over Davion Taylor, who is known for being able to run down the field and did play special teams? That is kind of interesting, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't know what that is. Maybe they want to give Christian Ellis a shot, and they've already given Davion Taylor a shot and kind of know what he is already.
Yeah, my mentality is why have guys?
I would say that's probably true.
Yeah.
He's been on the team.
Right. So my mentality is why do you have guys on the practice squad who have, they have these veterans who you can put on the practice squad now?
Davion Taylor is one of those guys that I bet for coaches is in some ways a fascinating case study because the guy he's a super athletic guy. He can run.
Run.
He looks like he should be able to be a good linebacker. And again, I'm not there every day, so I can't. You were there for a year. I don't know what the issue is, but everything about him says sub-package linebacker in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. That's what they drafted him for.
Yeah.
Just doesn't have it.
Awareness.
You have to have that to be a sub-package linebacker.
You got to have awareness.
Can't play man defense as you always say.
He's not the most aware player. Of what's behind
Lack
them.
of experience.
Understanding coverage and stuff like
Understanding how routes go together.
Yeah, awareness.
Jason, one more thing on special teams before we move on. The Eagles have one of the youngest coverage units in the NFL. Is that a concern for you with some of the young guys on teams?
I think that's the nature of the NFL. Maybe it's younger than most, but I think the guys that are down on special teams hadn't gotten to their second contract yet.
Yeah. We're talking about rookies, first and second and third year players.
Yeah.
Would you be prone to maybe wanting to play T.J. Edwards on kickoff coverage in N'Kobe Dean's place?
Absolutely not.
No.
Well,
I mean, I only ask because Malcolm Jenkins used to play every single snap on defense and then go play on special teams as well.
But he was a safety. He was a safety. So he's behind everyone. Everyone forces the action to him, and then he comes in and spills the play and makes the play. But it was like it's funneled toward him.
He didn't do the dirty work?
No, he wasn't. It looked
Would you
good
be
for
a
you
full
guys.
do the dirty work, Greg? You got that one.
Of course you got
little
Steely
So
Dan.
you couldn't make T.J. Edwards that sort of
Steely
same
Dan.
guy?
No, but what happens if it's a foot race? Because that happens sometimes. What happens if it's a foot race and you got T.J. Edwards out there trying to be safety?
Kaiser White? Kaiser White, I think, does play.
Yeah, he plays a little.
Well, he was a safety in college too.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, we'll see if the Eagles do anything other than just elevating Christian Ellis.
I will say this game, usually tough football teams, like the Titans are, always great at special teams.
Well,
they
take it really seriously, I can tell you that.
18 yards per kickoff.
The formula is there.
Right.
It's there, that's there. Tough football teams are good at special teams.
Yeah.
They're so well coached.
That's part of being a heavyweight team. They're a heavyweight team.
Sure. All right.
So guys are going to be sore on Monday, is what you're telling us.
Not saying that you can't win games the way that the Eagles are.
Right.
Yeah.
They
I'm
are
not saying you can't win games this way. It's just that when it comes to bowing up time where it's just move this person, we're great at it at the offensive line, but other areas we're just not as great at it.
There you go. All right, let's switch to the topics, talk a little bit about the Eagles offense. Sort of fascinating, Adam's been bringing up on ITB lately that Jalen Hurts has not attempted more than 30 passes in a game, I think, since the Jacksonville game earlier in the year. Some of that is they've been winning big. Some of that is they run the ball. It's really not a knock. But what I find pretty interesting, guys, is that his deep ball, especially over the last few weeks and getting Quez Watkins involved, which Jason Avant has been calling for, has really become one of the nicest deep balls in the league. And you saw it again last week on that back shoulder throw DeQuez Watkins. Greg, I'll ask you, from what you remember of him last year to what you're seeing now, as far as just a consistent thrower, what is the biggest difference?
I mean, you know, I think you're seeing a guy, to me, I think he throws with a better base more consistently. Mm-hmm. You know, the thing about quarterbacks throwing is it all starts from your waist down. That's where it needs to be consistent.
Right.
Maybe I'm old school because we're used now to seeing, you know, Patrick Mahomes do his thing and all that.
Aaron Rodgers.
Right, and do all that. But at the end of the day, repetitive mechanics are absolutely critical. Mm-hmm. You should throw the ball the same way every time unless the defense demands otherwise, particularly from the waist down. Obviously, you know, a dig ball where you have to drive it is different than throwing a vertical route over the you know, those are different arm throws. But as far as your mechanics and your base and stepping to your throw, I think Hurts is better at that. I think he's a much more balanced thrower now than he's ever been. And I don't know if that's, I assume that's coaching, and I assume that he's receptive to coaching.
Right.
I've heard that he is. I don't know Jalen Hurts. You know him.
Definitely receptive to coaching.
So, I think you see him look like a comfortable thrower. I remember watching him coming out of Oklahoma. And I, like many, had questions as to the way he threw the ball. He was elongated.
Right.
He didn't look on balance very often. He didn't look like a comfortable, natural thrower. He may never be a truly natural thrower the way we think of, some guys. Like, he's never going to look like Aaron Rodgers throwing the football.
Right.
Okay, Aaron Rodgers may be the best thrower we've ever seen. But Jalen Hurts looks, everything now from lower body through his upper body is more in sync, and he looks far more comfortable throwing the ball. And then, so if you notice, when he throws deeper balls, there's less effort and energy involved.
Yes. I was going to say he's calmer.
Yeah. Because his body is calmer, correct.
Right.
So those are the things I notice on film.
I would say I agree with you. I think that understanding the plays is huge when it comes to any player. And I'll give you an example. As a first-year player, you're focused on running the lines. The coach has told you, these plays, here's these plays, I'm going to run them just like the paper is drawn up. That's not how the game is played. Right? That's just a format. That's just an example. Understanding coverage, understanding when it's sped up, understanding how to make adjustments, understanding what timing that is on in the game is different. So I believe that's one of the biggest difference, like with the play to DeQuez Watkins, is just the timing of it. Last year was like he was late getting to it because he was playing the game from the paper rather than understanding everything that comes along with the game and how the NFL timing is. So I think that's one thing that's helping him with deep balls as well.
And I would say this, I think those two things go together. They have to go together.
Yeah.
I think that if your mechanics are poor, you can understand everything that's going on the field, but you'll miss throws.
Right.
Okay? And when I say miss throws, I mean with poor ball location, things that you'll speed up. If you notice, and it's the old John Wooden phrase, be quick but don't hurry. You'll notice that the really good quarterbacks, most of the time, they never look like they're playing fast. They never, even when there's people around them, they never look hurried. They never look frenetic. Okay?
Like Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and he's an extreme
Super
example.
frenetic,
Right. And Jalen, I think, is a relatively calm player. Now, are there still times when he's a beat late? Yes, there are. And he'll ideally continue to get better at that. But he's a much more calm player now. He has a game here and there. It might have been the Colts game a few weeks ago, and of course they ended up winning the game. He made some plays down the stretch. But I thought in the Colts game a few weeks ago, he had some dropbacks where he reverted back, where I thought he was too conscious of the rush, and he broke down too early. He broke down too early.
Drop his eyes a little bit?
Yeah, and that may happen on occasion, as he's continuing his development.
Right.
Because the key word, and Adam knows this from other things we do, is you've got to feel the rush, never see the rush.
That's a coaching term. Feel it, don't see it is a term, yes.
Right.
I love that.
It's a great term. I learned that very early on in my career from many
times,
quarterback coaches. You should never see the rush, you should feel the rush. If you see the rush, you got a problem.
Got it. Right.
Playing great football.
Yeah.
He hadn't turned the ball over.
No.
Games lost. The ball's in someone else's hand, which he's delivered it to them in a proper sense, and they've made a mistake with it. He's playing really good football.
Yeah.
And one more thing, the trust that he has in his pass targets. We didn't see this last year.
And that's another critical piece.
That his willingness. You and I were together a couple times. We were in with Miami.
Yes.
In training camp in Philly here. And the willingness to make throws, he just wasn't doing last year.
And that
is so big
How
for a young
often have you heard
quarterback.
me talk about that over the years? The willingness to turn it
Oh,
loose.
to turn loose, which we've talked about
You
Derrick
have
Henry many
got to
times.
be willing
Throw
to
the
turn it
football.
loose.
He's pretty fearless right now.
In this league, you can't be a see it, throw it quarterback. And by that I mean you can't wait to see it and then throw it.
Right.
Because then you're late.
Yep.
I remember having a great conversation with Steve Young years ago when he was a 49ers quarterback, and I've gotten to know Steve very well. And he said he became an NFL quarterback, a real good NFL quarterback, when he truly inculcated Walsh's belief that, hey, you have to throw the ball not knowing exactly where the receiver is. He's going to be there,
Right.
and you've got to throw it.
Did you see the drill they did when they blindfolded Steve Young?
Yeah.
And had him do that. They had him just what Greg said. That, So you should be able to do this blindfolded, and he did it.
Jaws used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
When I
story.
worked with Jaws for years and years, and he'd be in the office every day, he said there were throws I could make blindfolded based on the drop and the throw, because they're spot throws.
Right.
You're throwing them to a spot. Like a lot of out routes, you're not waiting for a guy to make his cut out, because by then it's too late, and then the corner jumps in front and he intercepts it. Those are spot throws. I don't think people understand the concept of spot throws.
Right.
There's a lot of balls that are thrown. You're throwing it to a spot based on the drop, your drop, with 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, and you're throwing it to a spot where the receiver's going to be.
Before the receiver is even released and come out of the break. Right.
Correct.
Which I can imagine for a young guy like Jalen Hurts, you're a second-round pick. The franchise is flirting with this, that, and the other in the offseason. You might be afraid. You can understand to make mistakes, and those are the kind of throws where
how hard that must be.
Letting it look.
College quarterbacks
must be
that
so
don't
hard to
come
do.
from, because college systems for the most part are not like that at all.
No.
So now you come to the NFL, and that's what you have to be taught. I bet that's a scary thing for a quarterback to throw it, and feel like I don't know if my receiver's going to be there.
There's definitely a lot of trust and there's a lot of preparation. The only thing that you have to see is know your drop, understand where the coverage is and where the hole is, and he should be there.
Right. I mean, all those window throws and zones in the middle of the field, I don't know if people realize how hard those throws are.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like if you're catching an in route, 15, 16-yard in route from the outside, majority of the time you don't see the quarterback.
Right.
Majority of the time,
Right.
You just see the ball in the air.
And he's throwing it before.
It's hard for a receiver, too.
It's coming in between hands.
Right.
You're literally
Stuff
turning
like that,
around,
yeah.
the ball's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jason, one more thing on that. You were with the club in 2020, Hurts' first year. How far has he come since that time? What was it like in 2020? I know. What was it like in 2020?
To be honest, I'm not going to be the person that's like, yo, I knew Jalen Hurts is going to be, the man. And,
Right. Nobody really did.
No.
Listen, the only thing I knew is that this kid worked extremely hard. He was a leader, and if you met him, you were going to root for him. But when it came to just technique, it's night and day.
Yeah.
Like, just the sheer fact of him not being able to read the defenses properly at times coming in as a rookie, him not having the ability to have a big arm to make up for him being late because he didn't know the defense.
Right.
Because all of these problems start to, go together. Because if you don't have a big arm, you can't overcome not seeing the defense.
Right.
Usually big arm guys can make up a few, but receivers hate them too. Like receivers hate big arm guys because they can't see the coverage, but they can force it in there too late, and then you can't catch it because it's coming 100 miles per hour.
Yeah, or you're catching it and taking the biggest hit in your life.
Or whatever.
And most big arm quarterbacks are like that to some degree.
Yeah, to some, But in general, so he had so much to make up, and just. I cannot believe in my mind that this guy has taken this many steps to get to this level so quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was 4 or 5 things. Usually you don't correct that many things in this amount of time. Would you agree with me?
Yes, it's.
I don't know if I've seen it.
Look, we all
I don't know if I've ever seen it.
There's two parts to this. We all know that Jalen Hurts was drafted to be Carson Wentz's backup, not to be a starting quarterback. We all know that.
Yes.
We also all know, and I evaluated him hard coming out of Oklahoma, and I spoke to people as well, which I do because I evaluate, all these quarterbacks. No one saw him as a definitive starter in the National Football League.
Right.
They saw him as a clear project. Maybe he could get there. Maybe. Right. Not, hey.
Small chance.
Right. Not in 3 years we know this guy's a starting quarterback.
Right.
Okay? Like I said, there were serious concerns. In fact, there were a lot of people who thought that he would have to play in a system almost like Lamar Jackson, where it would be and there's elements of that in the Eagles, but it's not like the Ravens, okay? But it would have to be like the Ravens, where it was truly a run game foundation, and that he would not be good enough to be a passer in this league, a true passer.
Right.
And while obviously there's some inconsistency at times, he is clearly moved in the direction where he can make throws.
All right, two quick things.
And he can beat you.
And he can beat you, right.
Jeffrey Simmons is active
right.
for the Titans. Now for the Eagles, here are their inactives. Ian Book, Josh Jobe, who's healthy, but he's not going to play today. Trey Sermon, Josh Sills, Sua Peta, and Robert Quinn, who was hurt.
Trey Sermon inactive today.
Yes,
all right.
once again.
Okay, once again. Sticking with this theme, cornerbacks for Titans. Roger McCreary at Auburn. Second year or rookie now?
Rookie,
right? And then Christian Fulton on the other side.
They play a lot of packages, though. We got to
okay.
work
So
through that.
I'm going to ask you how if this aerial attack is going to happen for the Eagles today, do you see the matchups going?
Well, let's just talk about the way the Titans play. The Titans are a heavy zone team on first and second down. They play with a lot of light boxes and a lot of two-shell looks. They're a heavy zone team. On third down, they play dime. And in dime, they transition to being a higher percentage man team. Right. That's what they've done. Now, could that change because of the Jalen Hurts factor? That could change. Because obviously we see when he sees man coverage and if he sees space in front of him, he goes.
Yeah.
So could that change? It could. They've also used spies.
Yeah.
So they could do that as well. David Long is a really good linebacker. A really good linebacker. Athletic, fast. He could be used as a spy if they so choose. But they play big nickel, three safeties.
Andrew Adams.
They play conventional nickel. They play dime. And it's all dependent on, down, distance, field location. So they play a lot of people on defense.
Yeah, so this Titans defense overall, solid. If they have one area of concern, because of how much zone they play, they give up a lot of yards passing. 29th in the league when it comes to passing.
Right.
30th in completion percentage. 27th in passing touchdowns. This is an area where our team can take advantage of them because of those first and second down throws. This is one of those games where throwing it on first and second down may be advantageous to your team rather than sticking to the traditional run, because they'll play man on third downs and almost exclusively, which is weird.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they'll play a lot of big nickel, I would imagine, on first down to get three safeties on the field because they're linebackers, so they'll play with two linebackers. It'll likely be Long and Cole. And Cole's giving them some really good snaps.
Sure.
He's giving them some good snaps.
Yeah, the Eagles have sort of, I don't know if they've invited or embraced it, but usually when they play a team that's good at stopping the run, but does it well, as you said, in light boxes and with nickel or even dime, although it's third down, but they fare pretty well against that. So I wonder if the Titans are not even going to try to just see if they can do that to start the game. I mean, I know that's their identity and they stick to it, but...
To me, the Titans have an illusion, like we talked about earlier, of a light box. Because the safeties are in position to get there faster.
Okay.
Because they're in cover four. They start everything from cover four, and then they shift to cover two. They bring the safety down in the box to go to cover three or zone, whatever. Everything starts from four. And when you do that, you can get two guys in support if you need them.
Real quick.
Yeah.
And Byard is one of the best safeties in football.
Yes.
Kevin Byard.
Love Kevin Byard.
What do you like about him so much?
Oh, he's a complete safety. I remember, it's funny. He went to Tennessee Chattanooga, I believe. Was it Tennessee Chattanooga?
Okay, you might be right.
Yeah, and his senior year they played Alabama, and of course they lost, 50-10. It was Tennessee. Could you check that? I think
I will check it. Yeah.
Now it's bugging me, but I think he did. And he was dominant in that game against Alabama. I mean, they got killed, but he was making play after play after play. Athletically, he looked like he belonged on the field against Alabama.
Middle Tennessee State.
Middle Tennessee State.
Reed Blankenship.
Sorry.
Safety you.
Right. and he was a dominant player on the field against Alabama. And I remember watching that tape, and then I watched some other games, obviously. I don't just watch one game with a player. But I just came away from that game thinking, wow, this guy, because I didn't know much about him. I mean, Middle Tennessee State's obviously not a Power 5 school. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy just jumped off the film against Alabama.
That's how it's supposed. When you're pro, you're pro.
Right. Yeah.
When you're pro, you're pro.
And he's been good from year one.
Yeah,
he's been
really
good from
player.
year one.
Great rookie year, absolutely, definitely. Didn't he make All-Pros a rookie?
He might have.
I think it was first-team All-Pros.
And he's super smart. He sees things. He's made some interceptions where he knew exactly what the play was.
Sure.
He sees it really well.
Sure.
Yeah, they like their safeties.
Yeah.
They pay both of them.
So if the Eagles do want to run the ball, obviously Miles Sanders, to get him, we went into this year, and a lot of people thought Miles Sanders by this point this year was going to be playing second fiddle to Kenny Gainwell, which has not been the case. In fact, Miles Sanders has had his best year. He's the NFL's 5th leading rusher. He's averaging 82 rushing yards per game, and he's already got career highs with 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. Adam, who would have thought that as we had all those offseason conversations about Miles Sanders and his fate with the team?
We've talked about Kenny Gainwell a lot in the show. We know how much the staff liked him. They were very involved in him being drafted here. For whatever reason, he's not been quite that guy, particularly in the passing game.
Yeah.
His numbers are down this year.
Yes, they are.
But Sanders in a contract year, he's been a better runner. He's more decisive. Last year, no rushing touchdowns. Now he's 8. He's headed for 12 to 14, which is amazing, considering where he was last year. So he's been a smarter runner. We've talked about getting those tough yards. And today's going to be an example of how you're going to have to get that.
Yes.
They just don't, other than Barkley, where he went off, it was week 1, they don't have a lot of games where you run well against them.
No, they're very good running
They're
football.
very disciplined. So,
by the way, Gainwell far and away played the most snaps of the season.
That was
last
interesting.
week.
Well, they ran so much last week. Yeah, I don't think they wanted to give Miles any more than 21
Last
touches.
week was like a college game. You don't expect that every week.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting
He's healthy, and that's the thing. He's been
right.
hampered by injuries for years.
Right.
And this is the first year where he's playing majority of the football games, and he's not sidelined with the hamstring.
And give Jamal Singleton credit, the running backs coach. It's very obvious to me because we started seeing this in training camp. There are 2 things we noticed. Sanders is much bigger physically, lower body, which I think has helped him. And then they were working on certain things in training camp, getting to be just hit it up in there, take what's there instead of what's not there.
Right.
And he's not getting the negative runs as we've seen. We know in years past, a lot of big runs. And then he would get hurt or he wouldn't be as effective. He's so consistent.
You can't force big runs in the NFL. They happen.
Right.
You can't force them.
Yeah.
It's sort of fascinating. He's having his best year, and by far, statistically, his longest run this year is 35 yards, which is the shortest long run that he's had in any of his 4 years. Now, there's still games to go, but my point was, we saw early in games in his first 3 years where he'd have a
70-yard
run, a 70-yard run. What do you attribute to that sort of better stat line, but less explosive?
The long runs are always hard for an explanation.
Yeah.
But I would say that Adam's right. I would say that he's learned, and maybe it's coaching, maybe it's just him developing an understanding of how to be an NFL runner. But in this league, first of all, to be a really good back, and we'd like to think he's reaching that level, you have to run inside. You have to.
Yes.
The NFL game, for the most part, unlike the college game, is played between the numbers and between the hashes. The college game is played on the perimeter.
Yep.
So at some point, whether you're talking about the passing game or the running game, you have to work where there are a lot of bodies.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And he's become much better understanding, whether it's intuitive, instinctual, whatever, whether he thinks about it during the week, at working where there are bodies. Because you can't be a good runner in this league unless you can do that.
Sure. Interestingly, well, there's another interesting stat I want to get to in a second. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of Philly sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation to give you an idea of what Miles is going against. And really, the Eagles, as we talked about the Titans defense, one guy this year has gone for over 100 yards against him. That was Saquon Barkley, week 1.
He had one long run, too, in that game.
Run. Right, it was one long run.
Penn State, got that in common.
Yeah, got that Penn State guy in there. 164 yards. After that, the next best is Josh Jacobs, who's having a very good year, but 13 for 66. Then Samaje Perine, 17 for 58. Only 3 running backs have a rushing touchdown this year.
They are really, and Autry is, he's been missed the last couple of weeks, but Simmons is, he's not the pass rusher that Aaron Donald is, but I watch Tennessee every week, and Simmons has snaps. He just dominates people up front.
Right.
He is country strong. He's super powerful. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
He just dominates. He moves people. And this is that's why I said it's a heavyweight fight, because he's going to have snaps against Dickerson. He's going to have snaps against Sayamalu. He'll have snaps against Kelsey. He just moves people.
Yeah.
So he's got to be.
And you know who's a really good player, run defender, who's probably going to get a lot of snaps today? Tahir Tart, who's a Philly kid.
The nose tackle.
Yeah, he's a pretty good run defender.
Yeah. It's going to be like one of those. I like these games.
Yeah.
Where it's all about the trenches.
And Mario Edwards Jr., who I remember his dad with the Cowboys. This guy's bounced around.
His dad was a corner.
Yeah, for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Came out of Florida State.
Yeah, and Mario Jr.'s been around a lot. It was a second rounder, maybe, the Raiders? Maybe?
Yeah, and you know what? They got him a little before the middle of the season. They plugged him right in. I think he played 35 snaps his first game with them. He's played really well, both at D end and at D tackle, because they've had injuries.
I always find it fascinating when a guy whose dad played in the league, but they play like entirely different positions.
Right.
Like Craig Hayward was a running back, right? And his son is a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
His other son is a tight end.
There you go.
That's right.
For the Steelers,
Yeah.
Your body type is your
There are a
body
couple
type.
guys in this league. Just like it's a complete different juxtaposition there. All right, listen, we always tell you, you can have great content like Inside the Birds, but you got to know how to present it, and that's why we've got Public Square and Rebel Hill. Our teams of James and Zach are back behind the controls. They are bringing Inside the Birds to you in high definition with great graphics, videos, and more. Make sure you contact Public Square Media and Rebel Hill Productions to produce your webcast, podcast, live show, or anything else you can dream of, because that team can bring it to life. We thank our friends at Public Square and Rebel Hill, Zach and Jim. All right, just real quick before we sort of wind down, the Titans haven't really seen, they have a great run defense, we talked about it. They've played Patrick Mahomes, who's more of I don't think we would say Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts are the same type of runner.
I don't think they've played a quarterback, if I can recall, that is a featured part of the run game.
No, because even week 1, I don't think, if you go back and you may have watched that game, that they used Daniel Jones.
No, he's not the same.
As a runner.
No.
They do use Daniel Jones on design runs, but in that game,
but it's very situational. It's not foundational.
Correct. So this will be sort of unique for that challenge for them.
Right.
This will be definitely a unique challenge. Hopefully they're not. This is not the game, to me. This is not the game to have a bunch of quarterback design runs. For Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, he took some shots last week too, by the way.
Yeah, but this isn't like there were like schematic problems with Joe Barry's defense. One of the worst defensive game plans I think I've ever seen before. Just for a running quarterback to be in that much man coverage, and it just didn't make much sense at all.
Yeah.
They play a ton of man, Green Bay.
Yes, and for a running quarterback and Jalen Hurts, it just it just didn't make sense. It was like. Yeah, it's just like I'm going somewhere, so I'm about to get fired or something.
Yeah, the internet was not kind to Joe Perry.
It was a tough. Now, what I'm saying is that there's always going to be bodies near Jalen Hurts this game because of the nature of their zones and the nature of the mentality of their players. They're going to try to tag him. This isn't the game to just, run the ball.
And it is football. And, maybe it's not politically correct to say this, but they're going to try to hit him
him out the game.
Little harder than they might normally.
Yeah. Well, let's get it known. So,
right? Am I right?
The media can't say it, the coaches can't say it, but we want to knock you out of the game.
Right.
And it's like, if we knock you out of the game, we don't have to worry about you for tomorrow.
And by the way, if you're hitting somebody illegally, that's a perfectly fine.
Right. I'm not saying they're going to try to. I'm going to say they're going to bring a little extra.
Yeah. Doesn't make everybody Greg
We'll
Williams
see what that looks like.
Yeah.
The Eagles know that too.
Yeah, I don't want to. You know, what was it, 5 or 6 quarterback design runs last week?
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't want that.
No, in fact, this is the kind of game I think in the past when we've seen the Eagles go up against aggressive defensive fronts like this. But if there's opportunities in the passing game, they will come out passing if they feel like the opportunity.
And that may be
there.
the case today.
Yeah. Right. A.J. Brown, from experience, Jay, I know you never came back and played the Eagles.
Well, I did for Carolina, but I wasn't getting the ball a bunch.
Right, that's true, yeah. But, you know, teammates, I mean, you've been through this where a teammate has a homecoming-like game against a team that you loved and then, you know, was maybe a weird divorce. Do you think he will be battling some of that today? Or?
Oh, yeah. I definitely think that he's going to be battling it. And I think that he's going to play a really good game. And all he needs right now is the best agitators on the team to be his teammates, right? So, hey, man, they didn't want you.
Right.
They thought Treylon Burks could just replace you like that.
Right.
I bet you Tannehill was in the meeting signing off on it. I'm going to be that guy that's agitating A.J. Brown the entire week. You know what? The Eagles thought you were good, but nobody else thought you were good.
Right.
What you going to do about it? I'm that guy the
you would do that.
Oh, my gosh. The entire week. Dude, they think you suck in Tennessee.
Right.
All the coaches said. Like, they didn't want to – you asked them for a few more million for a player like you? We thought it was nothing. But he's like, oh, the price is too high.
Right.
Come on.
Great. So he's either going to have like 200 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns, or he's going to fumble like every other play because he's internalized.
I'll be interested to see early on if he's heavily targeted, like the Pittsburgh game.
Oh, he's gonna be targeted a bunch. These are the type, and especially with Nick. Remember that the coach wears the players' names and faces on his body for shirts and stuff. You know, so he's definitely a players' coach. So he's definitely gonna try to make sure that he.
Or else there's gonna be some pacing on the sideline like McNabb and T.O. against the Steelers.
Oh, by the way, real quick, someone is wearing a T.O. Eagles Reebok jersey and a Sam Bradford. One of the dealers is wearing a Sam Bradford Rams jersey, not Eagles.
Gosh. Unbelievable.
I love that.
There's blood in the water, though. Okay. Blood in the water with A.J. Brown. He got to solve this fumbling in these last couple games because when that occurs, people go and strip the ball more.
Right.
It only just attracts more sharks.
Yeah.
You know, so he has to solve that. And the way that you do that, if it's a one-on-one, you use your off arm high and tight, use your off arm to defend yourself, stiff arm, arm bar, knock hands down, whatever.
Well, he's never had this problem before.
No, it's weird.
Yeah.
So the craziest thing is that I just something that you should teach as a coach, any coach. If there's more than one guy, put 2 hands on the ball.
Yeah.
And it solves it. And I don't understand why all of our fumbles this year, besides Quez Watkins, is guys going into crowds with 1 hand on the ball.
You know how they say a good baseball hitter can just get out of bed hitting?
Yeah.
He just wakes up, hit. Jason Avant just walks off airplanes with coaching and analysis. Get off the plane,
He woke up very quickly.
drive here, and bam, drop all the knowledge on us. No,
sorry.
we're great. Actually, A.J. Brown is someone I want to talk about as we highlight our Mojo segment. Mojo is building the sports stock market where you can invest in your favorite players. You invest in what you know. You know sports. You know NFL football. So it's time to turn that knowledge into real money with Mojo. The shares that you can get in players entitle you to a guaranteed payout based on career-ending stats. There are no off days. There's no off season with Mojo. Anything can happen from March to August that will impact a player's share price, or that could impact a player's share price. And you can build your own portfolio, buying and selling stock in players on your own terms. Every play, every game, every season. Mojo offers over 300 skill position players, from quarterbacks to running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. Their published guaranteed payout formula is based on objective stats, so you always know exactly what the stock is worth. Mojo is available in New Jersey on iOS, and just by downloading the app, you'll have a chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. All you got to do is click on the link in the description box in this video for a chance to win that $10,000 in free shares of player stocks. Of course, you got to be 21 and physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. If you got a gambling problem, help's available at 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, I know that his Mojo stock, A.J. Brown, is not as high the last few weeks as it's been, but if you're listening to what Jason Avant had to say, might have been a good time to invest yourself in a little Mojo. stock in A.J. Brown before he has this monumental breakout. You think A.J. Brown has a big breakout today?
I do. Look, remember, he was ill leading up to last week's game. Everybody knows that. He's off the injury report this week. He's going to have a big game, and you know what? I've seen this forever in the NFL. Guys who leave a team and disrespected like that, and he said a low ball offer, you know he's going to stick it to him.
Sure. Now,
Deshaun has done it to us a few times, right?
Oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was
Washington,
yeah.
whatever he was. Now, there was a great faller on Mojo that I said in the pod, and then Jay said in Q&A, and we did not talk about this, but it was a very obvious NFL player whose stock is going to plummet now because of injury. But if you have the foresight to invest in this guy and know he's going to come back and maybe be on a different team, Jay, who am I talking about?
Who are you talking about right now? Are we talking about Mooney?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Everybody likes Darnell Mooney. He's a good player.
If he
He's
gets
out for the year.
If he,
out for the year, though.
Gets in the right situation, because remember we talked about a guy that can make guys move out of their spot. He does that at a high level. So if he gets with the right quarterback, he can be a really productive player.
There you go. And he's down 11.78%, so you can get him nice and cheap. Now, Miles Sanders, we discussed him. He's up 5.64% after last week when he had his 21 carries for 143 and 2 touchdowns. I'm not quite sure, though, that today's the day
I wouldn't be
you want to be buying
But
Miles
this
Sanders.
this is a long-term buy.
It is a long-term buy, and he will be a free agent. So Adam
Right.
brings up a great point. You see Miles Sanders, if he's not with the Eagles, going to a team next year and being 1,300-yard rusher and 8 to 12 touchdowns?
Do you think a team is going to pay him?
Well, someone's going to pay him. He may not what he wants, but he might be a feature back for somebody else.
For someone else, he may.
It's interesting.
I don't know. The value of a running back now is very, very
low.
And he's been hurt a lot. I know he's
Yeah.
had a good year, but I don't
It's
know
going to be
if
an interesting year. Josh Jacobs
right.
is having a career year. He's going to be a free agent.
Tony Pollard, who's
Tony
a great
Pollard.
year.
Yeah, it's a good year for running backs.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see how
It's
they
time
do.
for Zeke to get out of there.
We'll see how they do. It is time. It's also time for our Game Time Watches Player to Watch segment. Game Time Watches is the leader in licensed sports watches. You can see them right here. They're beautiful. Get your favorite NFL, NHL, or MLB team logo watch now.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's an Eagles one.
This is the Super Bowl champion one. Wow.
Absolutely.
Really nice.
Absolutely. So you can get it at GameTimeWatch.com. Eagles fans, the Game Time Watch is partnered with Inside the Birds and is offering a special promo code for 20% off using code ITB20. That's ITB20 for 20% off. GameTimeWatch.com. The code implies not just for Eagles watches, but for other watches as well. Not just for NFL watches, anything not already discounted. There's plenty of styles to choose from. Men, women's, kids, the shiny face, the big team color logo, metallic accents, metal case, thick black silicone strap. That's all that makes it an everyday style watch. They've also got the Varsity Drip Art Edition as well. You just go to GameTimeWatch.com. So we talked about it a little bit. Jason, your Game Time Watch player to watch is, of course, who?
A.J. Brown, baby.
There you go.
Let's
Well
go.
said.
up.
All the agitators on the team helping them out to get this great game.
That's good stuff.
Early and often. That'll be fun. I'm going to be looking on the sideline, see people like,
Agitated.
yeah.
It's great.
All right, Greg, who is your Game Time
I'm
Watch
going
player
a
to
different
watch?
route this week,
Okay.
just because I think that they're going to have to play a lot of run defense.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm picking T.J. Edwards
Ooh, okay.
Very nice.
because I think they're going to have to defend a lot of runs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, TJ,
And Edwards has had a very good season.
when
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would agree.
occasionally the Eagles play the 5-1 look, where Edwards is
They
the
do.
only linebacker.
Right.
A couple of people have told me
That's when they play nickel.
they do not like that for the Eagles because, once you get the guy past, if you're able to get the running back past the line of
Well-
scrimmage, TJ's helpless. Like,
Well,
there's
then
nothing he can do.
then you get into a larger question of how you want to deal with cutbacks, because you need someone else there to be
Right.
involved with cutbacks.
Right.
You need willing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there
In
we
the
go.
past,
There we
it's
go.
been
Because
Epps or
You need
Gardner, right?
willing safeties.
Because if there's only one true second-level defender, now again, those are designed so that someone else is theoretically going to be involved.
Sure.
But at the start of the play, there's only one second-level defender.
Right.
So you do not have a second-level cutback player. You have a filler, which is different than a true second-level cutback player.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It'll be fascinating to see what attack the Eagles take against Derrick Henry in that regard. Adam, who is your Game Time Watch player to watch?
So, I believe this is a game where the Eagles will actually play good run defense, forcing Tennessee to throw it a little bit more like they have the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And this is where I believe the Eagles' defensive line, which is pretty deep, I think they're going to have some good plays, and they're going to get Dennis Daly, left tackle. It's really, at this level, it's not a left tackle. It's more of a right tackle, a guard. Like Carolina really looked at. I know he played left tackle in college, but at this level, he's really not. Radins, who's not a great football player.
He won't be playing in this game.
Who are they playing at there?
It'll be Aaron Brewer.
Aaron-
Move back,
who's small.
Who's 275
Yes.
pounds,
Okay.
and that's
Oh my
something.
God, we wondered if Cam Jurgens could play guard at
Preston
3.
Smith
So-
ate Daly's lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
wow.
they're gonna get him. They're gonna get these guys. When we get to third down and long, they're gonna get this offensive line, and Hassan Reddick's gonna be a guy who's gonna be recipient of some great rushes.
Well, the left side of that Titans offensive line might be the story in this game, the way it was for Washington game 1, week 3, right? That whole offensive line had issues with the Eagles' defensive front. I agree with Adam. My game time watch player of the game is actually Josh Sweat, because I envision scenarios
better,
where Reddick gets
Yep,
all the
yep.
pressure
One of the two will
and
get it.
Sweat cleans it up
Yep,
with
yep.
maybe 2 or 3 sacks and a forced fumble. I do think that that's going to be a big part of the game, whether the Titans' left side of the line can hold up against the Eagles. Again, Eagles, 4.5-point favorites. 44.5 is the total. The money line minus 265. You can place your bets here at Rivers Casino and Sportsbook or on the Bet Rivers app. Jason, who wins the game? What's the score?
I had to go look at my phone for it. 24 to 20.
I'm just going to start handing you guys the sheet of paper before the game.
24-20 Birds.
Eagles win 24-20, so they don't cover, and it is a lower than the over/under.
Yeah,
Right?
I've just seen Tennessee because as I said, I do their radio a lot. Just come back in these games and just make them really physical, tough games. Now, I think the Eagles are better, so I picked the Eagles to win. I can't remember the score. It's not high scoring.
20-17.
17-13, I have.
I have it. No,
Oh, no,
Greg
my
has
fault.
a
Yeah,
20-17.
So I
yeah.
think the Eagles will win, but I think this is going to be, like I said throughout the show a couple times, a heavyweight fight. I think
right.
that's the way Tennessee plays.
I
The
agree.
game I almost picked against the Eagles.
Yeah.
You know what?
thought
I was
this-
thinking the same.
yeah,
I'll get to
me-
why I didn't in a minute. But 2 wins by the Eagles, no covers, under. Adam?
I've got it as another heavyweight fight. The Eagles will win it in the 13th round, and the Titans will finally fall, but 20-17 Birds. I've got it. And this
That's
would
what
be
I
the
had.
one game, though, I would be worried about them winning. This one, the way that Tennessee plays, such respect for the coaching staff. They make the most of what they got. This is to me, though, for a coach's game for the Eagles. They've got to find something that they could get. You guys were talking about maybe the voids in their zone coverage. They got to find something they could get. And you were talking about the yardage and passing. Quez Watkins, this is a game without Molden. Get him involved because he's looked good lately.
Yeah. All right, so that's 3 Eagles wins. 3 Eagles wins without covering and all under the total. I'm going to go a little bit against the grain. I have the Eagles winning 24-9. I do not think the Titans are going to be able to get the ball in the
3
air a
field
whole lot
goals,
today.
okay.
I can absolutely see Derrick Henry going up and down the field and the Titans having to settle for field goals because they can't make anything happen on third down. I think the left side of their line is going to be an issue for them. So Eagles cover, in my book, 24-9, and maybe people will be happy with me for once with my Eagles pick. All right, you can bet that game right here at Rivers Casino or on the Bet Rivers app. Big thanks to Rivers, Mojo, Game Time Watches, Sky Motor Cars, the teams at Rebel Hill and Public Square. Make sure you're checking out the coverage, our Inside the Birds post-game live. Adam Caplan, myself, Geoff Mosher, and former Eagles offensive tackle Trey Thomas. And catch our coverage on InsideTheBirds.com. For Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thank you for watching Inside the Birds pregame live. Enjoy the game.